The Magicians, a show about what would happen if Harry Potter lost his virginity, learned a bunch of four-letter words, and went to grad school by way of Narnia. Adapted from a series of fantasy novels that proved to be a hit with audiences who were disappointed by the Potter books' lack of cannibalistic evil wizards and casual bestiality, it premiered on Sci-Fi in late 2015. Even though it missed that window of cashing in on the Potter craze by several years, it was able to strike a real chord with viewers. And with the show now in its 4th season, I thought it might be fun to explore why that is. Is The Magicians a derivative mishmash of other people's ideas? Or a fun, adult-themed fantasy romp that swaps out magic wands for censor bars? Let's take a look at the first episode and find out. The show begins with a meeting of two people who will be very important to the proceedings. Dean Fogg, who you know is magic because he possesses the miraculous ability to bypass New York traffic, and his colleague Eliza, former Westeros whore turned giant moth enthusiast. They have a brief chat regarding the events that are about to unfold before we get underway and cut to where all the best epic fantasy stories begin: a mental institution. It's here that we're introduced to Quentin. He's clinically depressed, likes doing magic tricks, and uses children's fantasy books as an escape from the humdrum realities of the real world, like sexy girls with rainbows on their short shorts putting on a show for him without so much as asking for $1 in their G-string.
You were the most useless person who ever lived.
He bails on the party to reread some children's books about Fillory, a not-so-subtle Narnia/Oz analog, before his BFF Julia shows up to try to drag him back to the land of the living. Their relationship is complicated. Exactly how platonic they are is a bit of a gray area. Quentin wishes they were more than friends, a sentiment Julia doesn't seem to share, but in Quentin's defense, she is a hell of a lot harder to read than those books.
I'll do.
Come on, don't be naive.
All weekend.
No, you have to stop.
I love you. I will stab you.
Oh my God, Q.
You always this smug? Call me, okay?
Yeah, Hermione Granger's got nothing on Julia Wicker. This girl is the personification of mixed f***ing signals. If you're wondering why Quentin seems to live in a state of perpetual confusion and malaise, well, this isn't the only reason, but it's one of them.
Three-way!
Julia accompanies Quentin to his grad school interview, but it gets called off when they're greeted by a corpse. Don't you hate it when that happens? But the dead man left a present for Quentin, the mysterious Fillory and Further Book 6, because for an awkward loner who medicates more than he should and runs away from human interaction to escape into childish escapism, another fantasy book is just what the doctor ordered. But before we have time to dwell on that, Quentin and Julia are transported to the mystical land of upstate New York, where they're introduced to a whole new world of enchanting possibilities by taking an entrance exam. I can feel the magic in the air already. Confusing, huh? Well, Quentin, speaking as a dyslexic person, welcome to every damn day of my life. Thankfully, they spare us the essay questions, but then Quentin moves on to performing in front of an audience, because this is the show where our hero's uncomfortability starts at 11. I've watched this episode several times now, and this scene has always confused me. Dean Fogg wants Quentin to do some magic, but Quentin doesn't even know magic is real yet, let alone how to do it. Plus, we're gonna find out later on that thanks to some complicated mumbo-jumbo involving time loops, this is actually the 40th time they've been through this. Fogg is well aware that Quentin has no clue what's going on, so I'm not sure what he expects Quentin to do here. As you can imagine, things take a frustrating turn pretty quickly.
Do some goddamn magic! Do something! Do something! Do something!
Then, in an act of pure desperation, Quentin manages to do some magic and immediately faints at the sight of it. The boy who lived can suck it. It's only after he wakes up that he finally gets filled in on what the hell is going on. Magic is real, and Breakbills is a school that teaches it. But even with all his wildest fantasies about to come true, the most magical thing of all is that he doesn't need those meds anymore. Lucky son of a bitch. Less lucky is Julia, who failed the entrance exam, then circumvented the memory erasure spell through the magic of cutting herself. It's mostly downhill from there. She's got a rough season ahead. And Quentin's not doing so hot either. Turns out his new roommate is the only person at Breakbills more miserable than he is. This is Penny. He's a dick, and he hears people's thoughts whether he wants to or not. I only tell you this because it's gonna be a little while before the show gets around to explaining what his deal is exactly, and not knowing that Penny is telepathic makes him a little confusing at first. Also, there's upperclassmen on the hunt for some first-year boys Elliot, his kinda sorta platonic life mate Margot, antisocial magical prodigy Alice, and Katie, a new character created just for the show because the producers thought they should take time away from introducing silly things like alternate universes, an entirely new magic system, and evil wizards hellbent on killing and eating everyone because the asshole roommate needed someone to have a mid-air sex scene with. Sci-Fi had a real thing about those in late 2015. So Quentin lets his new friends tag along to Julia's birthday party, but the possibility of more presents isn't lifting her spirits. Whereas before she thought magic was silly kid stuff that she'd outgrown, now that she knows it's real, it's become her obsession, and she wants Quentin to tell Breakbills to test her again. He thinks they'd just wipe her memory a second time and she should accept their decision, which does not improve her mood. It says a lot about how quickly she's spiraling that her day takes a turn for the better when her own shirt ties her up and a sexual predator corners her in the bathroom. Or so she thinks. As it happens, that was another test, and this one she actually passed. Apparently, Breakbills is not the only place that teaches magic. So piss off, Quentin, and your Ivy League University campus. Julia's gonna learn magic in a grungy warehouse that looks like the perfect place to hide the dead body of an unassuming young woman who put her trust in a guy she thought wanted to rape her a few minutes ago. Well, I'm sure it felt like a good idea at the time, but Julia, maybe you should follow up with Quentin after all. And Quentin could probably use someone to talk to, as this Fillory obsession of his is not going away. He's having dreams about one of the characters in the books, a girl named Jane who's been sending him confusing messages he doesn't understand, most likely because she keeps being needlessly mysterious instead of just telling him what she wants him to do like a normal person would. Hell, she might as well tell him to save the cheerleader, save the world for all the good her cryptic prognostications are doing him. This rune burned into his hand seems like something Quentin should talk to a faculty member about, but he tells Alice instead since he recognizes it from a book she was reading, and then she ropes him into using a book she stole from Dean Fogg to try to summon the ghost of her dead brother, because reasons. Now that might sound insane, and it is, but Quentin's being spurred on by a character from a children's fantasy story. This is not the weirdest thing that's happened to him lately. But the spell doesn't work, as far as they know, and life at Breakbills gets back to whatever passes for normal. Or at least it would have if Quentin hadn't gone and jinxed everyone.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
You had to go and say it, didn't you, Quentin? That's like saying, "I'll be right back," or "I'm only 2 days from retirement." Haven't you seen any movie ever? You don't poke the bear with lines like that, you damn fool. It's just asking for trouble. But that realization comes too late. Don't say I didn't warn you, buddy. What happens next is on you. Damn. And all the Hogwarts staff had to look out for was a giant 3-headed man-eating dog. Lightweights. The magicians, much like Quentin and Julia's relationship, is complicated. It's clear enough what they were going for, taking a lot of well-known fantasy concepts, grounding them in a real-world setting and putting a darker twist on them. It's not a bad idea for a series. There's an interesting story here, the problems come from the way the story is told. There's a ton of information being dropped on the audience here, and a good chunk of it relies on you being at least somewhat familiar with the books, which at the time of my first viewing, I wasn't. I was left pretty confused and didn't bother watching any further until I'd read through the Wikipedia page and listened to the first audiobook. I came back to the series at that point and enjoyed it from then on, but yeah, this first episode has a lot to absorb. I feel like this would have worked much better as a 2-part premiere. Between introducing the magical college, the Fillory stuff, the summoning spirits angle, and the threat of the beast at the end, there's so much being thrown at you all at once in just 1 hour, and it's never really clear how it all ties together. And it's working so hard to introduce so many concepts that most of the cast have to take a back seat to all the world building going on. We don't really get to know any of the characters beyond Quentin and Julia. Others like Penny gave the impression that there was information I needed to understand what this person's deal is, and I just wasn't getting it. But I do like the way the episode doesn't treat the audience with kid gloves. It doesn't try to spell everything out or dumb things down. They're only giving you pieces of the story and putting a lot of faith in the viewers to follow what's going on, even if what's going on isn't entirely clear. The execution may have been a little faulty, but I appreciate the thought behind it. Overall, I think the episode suffers a bit from trying to cram too much world building into one episode and omitting information about the characters that we probably should have gotten sooner, but the introduction of the Beast at the end was pretty chilling, and there are enough teases of an interesting story to come that I wanted to see what happened next. I just wish I hadn't needed to read the fandom wiki page to understand what was happening now. This episode may be a little flawed, but there's a lot of potential here, and they obviously really cared about doing the books justice, so I'm going to be generous with the final score. It's a bit of a shaky beginning, but you can say that about most pilots, and there's plenty of interesting ideas on display here, so the show can only improve once it works the kinks out. Let me know down below if you want to see me talk more about the magicians in the future. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, smash that bell icon for notifications, and follow me on Twitter using the link in the description box so you'll always know when I upload new videos. I talk movies, TV, comics, trailers, and more, so if you like what you see here, stay tuned, and I'll be back real soon with the next one. Until then, over. Out.
It's a part of growing up, you know, selling the comic book collection and getting serious.
That, or stuffing them into long box after long box and hoarding them like a crazy person. You know, one of those.